everybody, my name is Clyde, and this is the cruiser video. What cruiser is the best cruiser for Tier 6 clan battles this season? Well, we're going to talk about it. Skada and I go in depth on a bunch of Tier 6 cruisers, talk about their pros, cons, weaknesses, and strengths. We are by no means experts, but we've collated a ton of information about the available ships to take into clan battles, and we hope that it will be entertaining and useful for you as you're making this pick to best equip your clan for victory in the upcoming season. Let us know in the comments down below what ships you're looking to take and why. I really do want to know. And of course, get at me on Twitter. It says up there. And we'll talk about ships there as well. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. We'll hide me and go down a page. So here we go. So we want to talk a little bit about cruisers for clan battles, Tier 6 cruisers. And I think Skada would probably agree when I say this was the most challenging segment to pick ships for. I think cruisers are just really tough once they got rid of the Graf Spee as an option. Cruisers became really challenging for us to pick. I don't know, Scott, what was your experience trying to select a cruiser, or 3 cruisers, I guess, for this?
Yeah. I think I had a definite theme that fit with a play style that I think I would play, and I think you did too. So that makes this conversation a little interesting. But yeah, for the most part, like I have, until they released the Dutch line recently, I had every Tech Tree cruiser line out to 10 finished. And I'm at the 8 on the Dutch now. So I'm pretty close to being done with them again, which would make you probably think that guy likes playing cruisers. As a matter of fact, I hate playing cruisers. I haven't enjoyed playing cruisers for a long time in this game. And so it doesn't really matter what tier we're at. I just don't really enjoy playing cruisers right now. The Captain rework didn't really do anything for me with cruisers. And so, yeah, it was kind of a struggle.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. And Tier 6 has, I think it's got a lot of choices for cruisers, but thinking about how these cruisers are going to stack up in a competitive play mode, where I'm normally thinking about a higher tier cruisers that have things like, radar, etc., that add to the dynamic change and the difference in those cruisers. It was a little bit different at Tier 6, but I still think that it's a worthwhile discussion. And so I think we'll launch into it here. We'll jump into our next slide here. The first one here is a Clyde pick. It's the De Grasse. This is a ship that both of us really like. De Grasse is a light cruiser with 152 millimeter guns that I find to be pretty accurate. A 6.2 kilometer range and 8-second reload on them. 25 millimeter for the HE pen. Fair AA. I don't think this is AA to brag about at 45. But it does also have a fighter you can launch if you find yourself getting in trouble or if you're near an ally who needs a little help. The speed on this boat is good, and then its speed booster is not the normal 8% speed booster. It's a 15% speed booster that can push the speed of this ship up to 40.5 knots. Now again, those numbers are with my configuration, with my captain, and possibly with a signal on there. So you should be able to achieve that number. If you have questions on how, hit me up on Twitter later. We can figure it out together. Concealment on this is 11.6. With Captain Perk and camo and stuff. 31,000 hit points or so, and a 12% fire chance. So the cool thing about De Grasse is you can be driving around at speed, at range, lighting fires with it. But the one thing that I'll talk about, and this is going to be a theme as we talk about these, cruisers, is that this cruiser is a certain type of role. This is an HE spamming cruiser that needs to stay at range to be safe. And if you're building a clan battles team, you can't really build a team of 4 of these and then your destroyer and then your battleship or aircraft carrier complement, right? You've got to have cruisers that fill different roles. So not everybody on your team can run a De Grasse or a cruiser that's that kind of rangy, fire spammy, burn down guy. And a weakness of a ship like the De Grasse is its ability to push a cap if things get serious, right? These fire spamming boats are support cruisers that set up shots for battleships and heavier cruisers. They don't necessarily go in there and muscle their way into a scenario where they need to be a tough guy, because they don't often wind up being successful at that. GMX comment about being a rodeo clown, absolutely, right? This boat is a boat that can tank in a way that's not just taking fire, taking damage. It tanks by moving quickly and being at range and causing battleships to shoot at it. If a battleship uses a salvo on the De Grasse that splashes and doesn't hit the De Grasse, that is tanking damage for your team, right? If you want to think about that, if you're in the De Grasse. A battleship, we talk about a 30-second battleship, gets exactly 40 salvos every battle, right? If they click fire every 30 seconds, they get to shoot exactly 40 times, twice a minute in a 20-minute battle. If the battle is shorter than 20 minutes, they get fewer shots. If they don't shoot every time they're reloaded, they get fewer shots. And so if they waste a salvo on a ship like De Grasse, then they wind up not being able to do damage to another ship. De Grasse is very different from Henry, but not totally different from Henry. So a Henry captain would work on it. If you've got a good captain on like a Charles Martel, that's a better pairing, because you probably took some things to enhance the guns on the 240 millimeter guns that you have on the Henry that you wouldn't have taken on Charles Martel. That probably wouldn't be as effective or efficient on the De Grasse. So that's kind of a thing, I guess, to note. But I think if you put a Henry captain on your De Grasse, you'd be just fine. And if you don't quite have the a tier 10 ship on this line, you could find another way, another captain off a lower tier boat, and you'd be just fine. So anyway, that's kind of my brief overview of the De Grasse and of this type of cruiser in general. Skada, thoughts on De Grasse? What do you think about this guy?
I like De Grasse. I like La Galissoniere, the tech tree version, right? De Grasse is like, it's like a 6.5 if the Galissoniere is a 6, right? It's a little bit better than the Gasolina. And I'm not going to keep trying to say Galissoniere. I'm going to use our nickname for
yeah,
the
go
Gasolina.
ahead.
It plays the same way as a Gasolina, right? It lights fires. It's an HE spam boat that you kite around with. When we did tier 6 clan battles last time, which seems like a long time ago now, once I gave up on Graf Spee because I was so bored of the rate of fire, I played this boat a lot, and played in that role of running around and trying to spam the other team's battleships and light fires and do that. But I like this boat. It also has usable hydros if you get in a situation halfway through the battle where in the second half you actually are moving into the caps with it and you have to fight smaller ships or cruisers. Its AP is perfectly adequate for fighting light cruisers if you want to move away from the HE. I guess the fighter consumable in this scenario is better than having no consumable there, but we both feel pretty poorly on fighter consumable. But it's going to supplement the mediocre AA that you have with this boat at this tier. I mean, its AA is okay, but I mean, it's like, but really it's about speed boost and throttle hacks and rudder jukes. I would use my Henry captain on it, like we talked about. You were talking about what captain you'd use. I think a Henry captain is going to be close enough. I don't know on the captain builds right now. I guess my Henry captain might be bad because I think my Henry captain actually has like a lighthouse build for Henry, which I wouldn't want to run on this. But
right, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah,
but yeah, so like a Martel captain or something like that, or just because it's a premium. Like I'd pull my Republic captain over, or I guess I'd be on the other high tier because I'm not done with the destroyers yet. Anyway, I'd have another captain I could use that was at least like 18 points, and I could make it work. I could make a build for the ship. But yeah, I really like this ship. I think in that role, it's a really good choice.
Yeah, we got a comment in chat from GMAX says Hydro over AA. And before he said that, I was having the same kind of thought. I was like, I wonder if we're out there rodeo clowning, then we're isolated, we're by ourselves, we don't have any shared AA. It might actually make sense to grab defensive AA instead of acoustics. I have a really hard time choosing defensive AA over acoustics. I think maybe what I'd do is I'd keep acoustics for a bit, go play a few matches, and if maybe on week 1 you see yourself facing aircraft carriers every time, make the switch. But being out there on your own, it might make sense to grab defensive AA. So that's definitely a good choice. I really feel like acoustics is a very powerful sensor, and at tier 6, it's the only sensor we got. You're not going to find a lot of radar at tier 6, and so acoustics then becomes the tallest of the 7 dwarves when it comes to having the appropriate having sensors at all, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say. So that's a good question, GMAC, and I think there's going to be folks who stand on both sides of that argument, and both of them are going to have some rational thing to say. I think for me, I'd probably stick with the acoustics until proven wrong, but def AA makes some sense. I don't know.
I think with this,
go ahead.
I was just say, I think with the style of play with this boat, I think Drevix has a good point too. Like, because you are going to play this guy wide and alone, I think taking defensive AA, and if you can on the captain, taking both of the AA buffs, the continuous and the puffs buff that you can take on a cruiser captain, they might make this pretty good at swatting tier 6 planes away. Which are going to probably be trying to come after you if you're causing problems for them. So that might be an interesting thing to try.
Yeah, I agree. I just threw in chat. Drevix had some comments about that, and I said, yeah, I think at range you'd be safe from most torps. They're going to be trying to get people who are on the caps, right? That's the primary target, right, of those torpedo armaments. And it's been a long time since I've really looked at De Grasse and thought about building a captain for it. There's some new skills out there, the heavy HE, the heavy AP type stuff. I don't know that you'd really lean into the AP with the 152s, but thinking about the differences in captain spec now from when I got this ship years ago, it's probably worth at least looking it over, especially if you're going to respec a captain for it. I don't know that anybody necessarily is going to do that, but if you are, it's worth kind of considering this boat. Your comment, or considering, those new skills. Your comment about the AP, I remember playing through the French line, and both the Emile Bertin and the Gasolina, or Galissonière, had fantastic abilities to get multiple citadels on tier 5 and 6 cruisers if they stepped out and were broadside, because you won't overpen so much with the 152s. So if there's a dude in a Dallas or even another De Grasse or Galissonière that steps out in front of you and he's broadside, and you can throw 952 millimeter APs with decent velocity into the side of them, you're going to do a great chunk of damage, I think, with the De Grasse. Again, I cannot stress enough that you can't take a bunch of these boats because they don't push, right? When Skada was talking about, I took the De Grasse out after I got bored of Graf Spee, that worked really well for him because he still had 2, maybe 3 Graf Spees in front of him, and he was setting up kills for those AP ships, right? He was burning people down, and those guys were cleaning them up, because on a 20-second reload, you go, okay, who's near death, right, in the Graf Spee? And whoever's near death is the guy that De Grasse was just burning, right? So don't take too many of this type of ship, but I think having one in your complement is going to be valuable. We often run a guy in a Hindenburg, keyed in, who's usually on stream with us, will do kind of the role we're talking about in the Hindenburg at tier 10, and I think he could find himself very at home in a ship like the De Grasse. Dr. Evick says, good application of the gas pedal and speed boost makes you very frustrating to try and shoot at. And that's that tanking via speed, that rodeo clown tanking that we were talking about before. Definitely a cool thing to do. And 40.5 knots in a light cruiser 15 kilometers away, that's an annoying target to try to hit, especially when it's hitting you and setting you on fire with a 12% fire chance over and over and over again. Yeah, we'll just roll into the next one. Okay, so Skada, tell us about the Mysore, your number 3 pick.
The Mysore is a really weird premium. It's a Commonwealth premium that is a Fiji that is at tier 6 with some definite nerfs. So it's a Fiji hull, has a Fiji's turrets. It only has 3 of the 4. Fiji has 4x3s, and this has 3x3 152s. It's got 14-kilometer range. It fires that British AP, the short fuse AP, and that's all it has. It does have improved AA over the Fiji, and that's part of the story on it, is that when the ship, or whatever the Fiji class ship that became the Mysore was given to the Indians, the Indian Navy, they pulled that turret off to add AA in post World War II. So it has a little bit better AA. It has 2 puffs of flak. It's got okay continuous damage. Speed's pretty normal for this kind of cruiser in tier 6 at 31.5 knots. It does have 9.6 kilometer concealment at this tier with the captain's perk. Also pretty normal for this kind of cruiser. It has a pretty good heal. It's better than most. It's very much the British. It's probably very similar to like Leander's heal, but most tier 6 cruisers in the game don't have any kind of heal, right? So this has a heal, and
yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna see as we talk about the ships that I picked a theme, right? So there's a heal here. This has hydros. It has creeping smoke, which is kind of a gimmick on these Commonwealth cruisers. But it's fine. Like, it's perfectly fine. You can cruise around at like 1/4 speed though, which is kind of neat. The one downside I note is that because it's a Commonwealth ship, Commonwealth doesn't have a tech tree of its own. If you have Commonwealth captains, if you have a 19, let alone a 21 point Commonwealth captain, God love you. You've either played the socks off of the Perth, or you just had so much captain XP you didn't know what to do with it, and so you wanted a 19 or 21 point Commonwealth captain. Yeah. I have like a 13 or a 14 point Commonwealth captain. that I use on this ship and I use on Perth, and the spec is close enough that it's not a big deal. Perth has a HE. I don't have any of like the HE skills, so it works out. But yeah, that's the rub on this, right? Because it's Commonwealth, that's not normal. At best, a lot of people just have a 10-point captain that they got with one of these ships. Like if you got a Perth out of a Christmas box, it would have came with a 10-point captain, right? And so that's the rub here. But it is a Fiji hull with Fiji's armor, basically, and it's a tier 6. So there are a lot of things to like about it, I think, and that's why it's my number 3 pick.
Yeah, I don't have a Mysore, but I've kind of been jealous of your Mysore this whole time. We have talked about some of the differences between that and Fiji because, you know, if you've been to the show before, if you've hung out on stream with us, you know I'm a Fiji fan. Mysore, I think, is an interesting ship. I don't know a ton about its details other than, you know, what you're educating me on right here. So I'll be interested to see how it plays. But I think the biggest thing that's going to keep people from playing it is what you just talked about, the Commonwealth captain situation. You don't have a huge pool of 4 or 5 lines of ships to pull captains from. And I think that's going to slow people down. You'll probably see a Mysore through the combat or clan battle season, but I don't think you'll see one in every battle. You know, you'll see one, but you won't see them all the time. So yeah, I think
you may not see them at all. Honestly, I've never actually looked on WoW's numbers to see what the play numbers are. Mysore was a boat. Mysore is the mythical premium that they created because they went and did a press junket in India and said, hey, there's uppity squat billion people here that might want to play this game. We should put a boat in and maybe they'll want to come play our game, right? Not really thinking about the fact that I think the majority of gamers in the country of India actually play mobile games, but I'm not going to get into what I know about the gaming market in Asia. But anyway, I think it's kind of, I never see them. Like, this isn't a boat that you see a lot when we play. We play every tier, like every week, right? And it's not a boat that you see a lot. I just think it has some advantages that make it interesting at this tier for this purpose.
Yeah. Shoot, I had a comment about it. I can't remember what I was going to say. Captains.
One other thing I'll throw out there, that is the camo in that picture. It's camos. That might be its alternate. It has 2. They're both. One of them is like flat tan, and the other one's like flat gray. They are really, really unexciting camos.
Yeah, they did not try very hard on the camo. That is for sure. I was going to say, you asked about the game metrics and stuff. Mysore does not have a lot of games, but Mysore is the #1 damage outputting tier 6 cruiser. And that is because it is new and it has been bought by high skill whales only, is my argument there. We'll see.
Not all of us are high skill. Low skill whales bought it too.
That's fair. But I think you'll see that those numbers are a little artificially high because the boat isn't, exceedingly popular across players of all skill levels. But it is definitely out there as a #1 of all tier 6 cruisers doing damage. It ranks the highest, at least as of the time of this video. Okay, well, we will jump to the next one after the Mysore discussion. I put in the Trento. This is a tech tree boat. It's the tier 6 Italian cruiser. It's a little bit different from the De Grasse, but still, I think it's fair to kind of call it similar in spirit. Now, the Trento, the difference between it, of course, and the De Grasse, of course, is the 203mm guns that fire SAP rounds instead of 152s that fire HE and AP rounds. You got SAP and AP on the Trento, and the reload on this thing is a grueling 15-second wait between salvos. However, the SAP on this thing will decimate cruisers and superstructures of battleships. You're going to do a ton of damage in this thing. I don't really call this like a rodeo clown like we talked about with De Grasse, but I do think of it as kind of a shark that kind of seeks around on the flanks looking for the sides of cruisers that it can pen, and it can really F up destroyers as well. The torpedoes that come on the Trento, it's got 2 3-torp launchers. They have a 12K range, and they go about 51 knots, so they're not real fast. You're going to use these to make certain angles of the sea or certain transits unavailable to battleships and other ships. You're going to throw those torps out. Maybe you'll get a hit, but a lot of times you're just doing that to make sure that nobody goes in there, and then you might come around a corner and hassle them with the main guns. You want to be accurate with this thing because your opportunities to fire are fewer than greater. because of that long reload time. But I think that a player who likes the play of original Henry before the nerfs, those kinds of ships that can sneak around on the side, the high tier Italian ships, Amalfi, Brindisi, and Venezia, you're going to do good work with the Trento if you had a good time with those upper tier ones as well, because you probably played the Trento. The concealment on it is not great. It's 14.6. I think you might be able to work it a little better than that, but it's not going to be a low conceal boat no matter what you do. And it does have the high speed oil smoke. 34,500 hit points is a pretty good chunk. And it's got a fighter or a spotter plane. I recommend the spotter because that allows you to shoot from further away and get into the fight a little bit earlier, especially if you've got some of those shorter range cruisers and destroyers in front of you. As you're kind of coming up on your flank there, you can pop up that spotter and get some hits on somebody that might be out of range, but not out of threat range if you use spotter. Second best DPM of all the ships I looked at. I can't remember what number 1 is, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure, on some future slide. I do think Trento is going to be capable. I don't think you'll see it in every Clan Battles team, but I think you might see. One thing we used to see with Henry's and then later with Venezia's was you'd have clans that would spawn in with 2 of those ships. So you might see 2 Trentos go up one side and just form kind of a 2-man tiger team to slap people from the east or west. I don't know. I think Trento is something you're going to see a little bit, but I don't think every team's going to field one. And again, just like the De Grasse, you're going to want to have some folks that are up there muscling in on the cap to make sure that becomes property of your team, while this person is over there trying to make those big alpha hits from the side to support the battleships and cruisers getting the work. Skada Trento thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, following the theme that you have, right? So this is a backfield boat. The difference here between this and, say, De Grasse is this is a heavy cruiser, right? It's got 203s.
Oh yeah.
So and the sap is useful on this ship. Now, I know I played Trento. Pretty sure I played Trento. I have Venezia. I don't remember playing Trento though.
Yeah.
That month was a blur, right? When the Italian cruisers were put into the game was right around the time we did the Puerto Rico grind. And Heavy McD also in the clan, we can speak to how all we really remember from that month is playing Gorizia over and over again to try to grind for the Puerto Rico missions. And Gorizia is a premium tier 7 Italian. So what I do remember of playing through the Italian cruisers though is that I struggled mightily until I got to the Amalfi. Because at that time the pen angles on the ones below Amalfi at tier 8 were crummy, and I could not make the sap work. I think that might be different now, and I think I understand better how to utilize that ammunition type because it was so new. Now that I've gone through the Italian BB line, and I've played more of those ships, so I think this is a good pick. I think Trentos are relatively tough. For the tier, I think it's a pretty good boat. And then there's also the reality with this game, which is that if you're taking a tech tree ship, for the most part, if it's from the last couple of years, it's better than if it was from the first couple of years. Kind of frustrating, but true. I think this ship has good speed, and those torps are usable. They're crazy long range and slow, but they are usable. Like, I used to use the torps on these and the torps on the French, and De Grasse doesn't have them, but Gasolina has torps, doesn't it? Anyway,
yes,
I used to use those torps for water space management a lot, right? You hook them around an island. You want to just make sure so people know when they see them float by that they shouldn't poke their nose out. It's a good way to try to isolate fights, is to use water space management torps on these mid-tier cruisers to push people away from one side of an island that you might be using so you don't get attacked from behind. And then you know, if they see those torps go past, they may think twice about coming around behind you. I used to do that a lot with these kind of ships, right? And so I think this ship's good, and I do think we'll see a lot of these. I think in the compositions we're expecting, where most of the time you're going to see at least 4 cruisers, and I think cruisers like this and cruisers like De Grasse are probably going to make up like half of that makeup. That's just my guess. We'll see though.
Yeah, I think you might just see one of these. And, you know, more of those smoke cruisers like the Mysore we just looked at will be 3, but it could be a 2 and 2. You know, it's very interesting to think about that option. And I guess, you know, time will tell. One quick correction. I think you said De Grasse does not have torps, but it does. I just double checked. De Grasse does have torpedoes.
Okay. Yeah,
Just for remember. Anybody who's curious about that.
Most French cruisers do. I couldn't remember if they did.
Well, there's a bunch of those premiums where they take the torps away to give it something else. So I think that's a fair assumption. But yeah, I think Trento's going to be interesting. Yeah, we got a comment in chat here from Odysseus. He says, I struggle with the sap in the Zara some games, and I do too. And it's choosing the right targets tends to be the biggest trick. I got better at that in the Zara, and then when I went back to play Trento, I was like, oh, this is how I was supposed to do it the whole time. Skada definitely played through Trento, Zara, those ships ahead of me when they had those poor angles. Because I remember when I got in there, I was just having a ball in them, and Skada's like, well, I'm glad those worked for you because they didn't work when I was there. So definitely, it kind of works out for us. Especially, the better angles you can get, the more on the superstructure you can focus that fire, unless it's a lightly armored ship. The 203s will go right through the side of any light cruiser, probably even any heavy cruiser at tier 6. But when you're looking at battleships, you're going to want to find that superstructure. And some of the battleships, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of these as we go, have pretty small superstructures. And maybe there's some time we need to spend in the future talking about armor profiles of these battleships, but we'll certainly talk about that. And the range, yeah, that's why I recommend the spotter for sure. I think the spotter helps that, and you're going to want to make sure you can put that spotter up every time it's available, as long as you're in a position where it makes sense. So I think, yeah, that's Trento. Unless there's any final stuff from Skada, we'll go on to our next one.
Yeah, I totally never played this ship. I was just looking at my port.
Oh, really?
I never kitted it. I have Trento.
Or maybe you just went straight to Zara.
I have the Grigier Wawa camo that they gave out probably during the event for it, like the nice premium camo that's like flat paint. But I never kitted it out, and so the fact that it's never been kitted out, I definitely never played it. I probably went straight to. I know I played Montecuccoli at 5, and then I think in the event I got the. I think I got the Zara, and I went straight to Zara. I think that's very similar to how in the British cruiser line, I never played Surrey. I played Devonshire, and then I played Albemarle, right? Because they do these events now, and you just and I'll have the same thing with the Dutch. I played Kikadin, and now I have Haarlem. I'll never play Undrocht.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a cool looking ship. Looks neat in my port.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Trento from us. We'll go on to our next pick here. Skada has the London. Skada, tell us about London.
London is, speaking of British heavies, and continuing with the theme of my picks, that there'll be a quiz at the end for the viewers if they can figure out how our picks went. But London is a tier 6 premium version of the Devonshire. So we have a lot of clanmates that have been playing through that line recently that are really into Devonshire. And London is basically the same class of ship. It's slightly different in appearance. It doesn't have as many stacks. I think as far as the British county class heavy cruisers, which they're from, I think London was maybe like a earlier refit or a later refit. Anyway, so the gimmick with London has 4x2 203s. They only fire 13.4 kilometers, so it's relatively short range. I think Devonshire shoots a kilometer further. Yeah, I know, GMAC, right? Hang in there, buddy. The HE on it's relatively powerful, right? So I played a lot of Goliath in our last clan battle season. If I was in cruisers, I pretty much took out my Goliath. So when I was looking for something like that at tier 6, right, it's either the Devonshire or the London. And the reason I like the London more than the Devonshire is because the London has smoke. The London has a smoke generator, and it's the only heavy British ship that does. Actually, maybe the Cheshire does at tier 8. I can't remember. But anyway, I don't think the Cheshire does. But London has a smoke generator, and it's basically Devonshire with a smoke generator. The torpedoes are a little bit different. It has 7 kilometers instead of 8 kilometer torps. I think we looked this up, and this has like the same torps that Icarus has.
Yes. Yes.
It has a 45 AA rating with 124 continuous and 2 puffs, which is pretty normal for this tier. It's better than some. It's not the best cruiser, but it's pretty middling. Concealment on it is 10.5 with the perk, right? So it's base conceal at 10.5, and then it's gun range at 13.4. You can see how that could be a bit sticky. But yes. I think playstyle wise for this, and likewise playstyle wise for the Mysore, because again it has similar gun range. It's only a little bit more rangy. is these kind of cruisers are going to be your sensor cruisers that get closer to caps. Especially in a world where we have the possibility of 2 aircraft carriers in clan battles at the same time. You being able to go in and smoke up, getting these cruisers in a position where they can defend a cap, or where they could actually like tap into a cap, but then smoke up, run their hydros so that they're aware of any torpedoes or any destroyers that get too close, and then actually still lay fire down if their carriers or their destroyers are spotting for them. I think is key, and I think that mix of the types of cruisers that we have, since we don't have Graf Spee, which is a pocket battleship, I think smoke cruisers and with acoustics are going to pair well with the kitey fire cruiser type cruisers that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have London number 2 here, and you'll see a theme continue through my picks, right? This is going to play similarly. You're going to play closer to the cap. You're going to smoke up, and you're going to try to knock out destroyers. And then because this is a heavy cruiser with 203s, if there is a Leander or there is another light cruiser within your range, you switch to AP on this, and AP hurts. It does have pretty powerful AP, and 203 AP is probably going to overpin something like that, a light cruiser. But again, it's got great HE as well. So yeah, that's why I picked London here. Again, tech tree equivalency would be Devonshire. If you like Devonshire, you could play Devonshire in a similar role. The problem with Devonshire is you don't have smoke.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I played through Devonshire and I complained to you the whole time. I said, this boat sucks, blah, blah, blah. I can't get anything done in this boat. And then I looked at my stats when I moved on to the Surrey, and I had a 56, 55% win rate, and I did big damage in it, for me at least, and reasonable for the cruisers. It's a boat that gets work done, but it's stressful, and I hate every minute of it, right? But I think there are players, like people who like the Goliath, people who are comfortable in that play style, who are going to benefit from choosing a cruiser like London or Devonshire. It's not me as much, which perhaps speaks to why the cruisers I picked are the cruisers I picked. But there is a definite place for these kinds of boats in there that can get up close, use their acoustics and smoke to see and not be seen, and then hit hard when they're called upon, right? I do think that carriers are going to try to torp drop these guys if they're stationary, and we're going to need to be careful of that, even in their smoke. You've played more of the Dutch cruisers than I have. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see Dutch cruisers in there? Maybe you know what? Let's hold that for later. I was going to talk about dislodging cruisers like this from their island homes. But we should talk about Dutch cruisers in case they either come up later or maybe during our honorable mentions, and how we could maybe use those to affect in clan battles. But yeah, let's put a pin in that, I think, for now. And we'll bounce down to the next slide unless you got a final thought, any response to what I just shouted out nonsense about.
Let's roll. Let's go.
Let's do it. Oh, hang on. I got to click on the right app. Let's do it. GMAC called this as soon as we talked about cruisers. And you know what? I don't even know if I think Makarov is the top ship here, but I think it needs to be in the discussion. And there's a bunch of reasons why. Makarov's reload is 6 seconds. I'm going to start with reload, and we're going to talk about this. 16.3 kilometer range, 960 meters per second, and 6 seconds on the reload. Makarov is a Russian ship, but brings along its German quarter pen. If you're going to be 14 to 16 kilometers away from the bad guys, slinging HE at them, and you take the Makarov, it has the highest AP, except for Trento. It has the highest DPM, and it has the highest DPM of all of the HE cruisers that I looked at. As long as you don't get hit. As long as you don't get hit. I need to say that again, right? So Makarov is not able to take a shot from a battleship. You need to be dancing, you need to be juking, you need to be safe, and you need to have friends that are up closer that are distracting those targets so that you can sit in the back and be the second or third most interesting target to your enemies. We talk about that a lot on this stream. But Makarov is a very capable ship that can hit what you click on and do a lot of damage if you're accurate. And with that 38 millimeter pen, you're going to pen pretty much any armor on, and any of the deck armor and stuff like that. Certainly any of the superstructure armor on any of the battleships. And you'll pen a bunch of the cruisers with HE. If you get up close, this thing can use its AP to incredible effect as well. And because of the reload speed, now this is sort of a farce and a falsity, and I'll tell you why. But because of its reload speed, it has the biggest AP DPM of any cruiser at Tier 6 as well. The trouble is up close is where you need to be to use that AP, and Makarov's not going to survive there. So don't fall for the trick of thinking it's an AP monster. But if you get in a situation where you get surprised, or somebody pops out around an island, is like, surprise! Like, you can turn around, and if you've got the AP loaded, you can either use it or fire your HE, switch to AP, and decimate a cruiser with the rapid firing guns on this thing. Now, that was a pretty emphatic advertisement for Makarov, and I know anybody who bought a Christmas box has one, right? Like this was that ship from last Christmas. But take it out and give it a try. If it's not for you, my feelings won't be hurt if you don't enjoy it. But I think this ship deserves a second look compared to some of these other boats that maybe you're looking at for the similar purposes. This one has good numbers to do it. 27,000 hit points is not as high as the De Grasse. The acoustics are not the German acoustics, which are improved. So they're torpedoes at 3 kilometers, ships at 4. You can swap that for turbo AA if you prefer. And if you have a Nevsky captain with a bunch of points like I do, I've got a 20-point Nevsky captain. It actually works really well on the Makarov. Whereas if you wanted to take out the Nuremberg, the tech tree version of this, which is a German ship, you wouldn't be able to bring a captain from another ship down because it's not premium. Can do that with Makarov. So I don't know. I think Makarov's maybe a weird pick. I'm not quite sure if it's really my number one, but I think it has some interesting attributes that are worth talking about and considering before we just overlook it as a pick for this. Skada, what do you think about Makarov?
I think that you like Makarov.
A little bit. I'll admit this.
Is
that the end of your thoughts?
That's
fine.
I think the problem I have with Makarov is that it still has Nuremberg's citadel, so it blows up really easy when people look at it.
It does. That is totally the reason to not take Makarov, right? I concur.
It's not my kind of boat, but I know you like playing it, so.
I actually don't know if I would be effective in it though, so I want to make it's an advertisement with a warning, right? Anyhow, that's Makarov for us. Bowmaster says, "I love it." I think he loves the dynamic that we have here talking about this boat. So that's Makarov. I think we roll to the next one because I think it's a ship we both like, so I'm going to go there next. Click and click. Skada, Leander. Leander is your number one pick. Tech Tree British Light.
Yeah, so again, now you probably understand the theme, everybody, of my picks. Leander is great. Leander's one of my favorite Tech Tree boats. I really, when I started getting better at this game, I think was when I was working through this line. And it wasn't because I was playing this line, but it was because I was finally figuring out concepts. And so I really like Leander a lot. Armory wise, 4x2 152s, 13, again, shorter range because British light cruisers, AP only, so they insta-fuse. They punish everybody that you shoot at them with as long as you know where to shoot. 2x4 torps at 8 clicks with 61 knot speed and single launch UK style. Again, both these ships and the London has the single launch UK style torps, which is fun. AA of 46, 119 continuous 2 pups, pretty similar to the London, in fact. Speed of 32.5, similar to the London, in fact, if not identical. It has a better concealment at 9 kilometers. Its concealment's actually pretty sick. She has hydros. She has smoke, or you can take a spotter plane or a fighter, but you shouldn't. You should take smoke, and it has a heal. The only problem I list for it for me is because it's not a premium, I could have captain problems. I only have a 10-point captain on my Leander right now. I could figure something out and put a better captain on Leander to make it more effective for this. To be fair, a standard 10-point build that ends with concealment is probably doable and fine. When you look at the British lights, there's a lot of cruiser captain skills that are just X'd out because they have to do with HE. So you don't have to worry about that. One skill that is fun to pick up on these though is that super heavy AP skill. That's like a you gotta take it skill on these British lights. Since that's the only ammo you're using, you might as well get the buff out of that. It's a nice damage bump. But all in all, I like Leander. I played Leander a bunch recently on PTS in 10.7 in the ranked mode against submarines. And in the upcoming patch, Leander will have depth charges added. And I murdered a lot of submarines in the test mode with Leander, running its hydros and using those depth charges to effect. And I think it's going to be really good. Yeah, Dr. Evix, you're with me, buddy. This is a cool boat. Yeah, Leander's rudder shift is great. I can talk about this boat a ton. I won't, but I could talk about this boat a ton. I think we'll see them. I hope we see them. I don't know why people wouldn't play this boat. It's just really effective. Plus, she's really small. So, like, if you're broadside and a bigger ship blaps you, it's always going to overpen Smolensk style. We dealt with that a lot this last weekend in clan or in brawls. I wouldn't say clan brawls. In the 3v3 brawls,
yeah. I
was getting so mad playing battleship, shooting broadside Leanders and just getting overpens. It was driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So anyway, Leander, great ship.
Yeah, and I put the little Clyde picture up here too because I love the Leander. I have a 9-point captain on mine, right? So like I think if I were going to take this into clan battles, I would buy the 10th point, or play a couple of battles this week, right, to get to my 10th point. And like you say, run that 10-point concealment build, and then maybe call it there. You're going to get a ton of captain XP if you win battles in clan battles. And I think Leander's a ship that's going to carry you to wins if you know what you're doing in it. It's a good boat. Huge fan of it. It has every trick, right? It's you rattled them off. It's got AA, it's got smoke, it's got concealment, it's got hull repair, it's got torpedoes. You can even get like 7-point-something kilometer secondaries in it. And one thing that we talked about on a news segment a while ago on stream was that Leander and Fiji both got reload nerfs because these boats are strong. And a lot of times World of Warships doesn't come around and like tune old tech tree boats. But I think knowing that brawls were coming up, knowing that clan battles were coming up, knowing that these things were happening, where we were going to see tier 6s and 7s in competitive play, they looked those boats over and maybe made a tweak there. I'm not sure that was their motivation, but it's something to consider. And the reload nerf wasn't bad for Leander. I think it went from 7.7 seconds to 8 seconds on the reloads. And so it's still very capable. It's still a great ship. There's a lot of reasons I think to take this boat out. It's super useful. It's a Swiss Army knife, honestly, at tier 6. So I probably like Leander better than I like Makarov for actual competitive play. So I mean, this is my real number one, right? I have to jump on your bandwagon because I think you hit it perfectly with this boat. I love Leander.
Yeah, and full open discourse too. Like we talked about what ships we were taking, and in one of my honorable mentions, I don't know if we're ready to kind of roll to honorable mentions, but I mean, I had Perth in my list originally and not Leander. And Perth is a premium Leander, but it's a Commonwealth boat, so you have that captain problem.
Yeah.
But Perth adds HE, and Perth is got hydros and a spotter plane, and the spotter plane's kind of a fun mechanic on it because you can crawl in that smoke and light fires. It's kind of a cool boat. And then I made the last minute decision that no, I have one Commonwealth boat, and that's going to be the Mysore, because the Mysore, the London, and the Leander all can do a very similar mechanic in this season, right? And that mechanic is what I talked about on London. It's it's contesting caps or getting near the cap. It's smoking up. It's launching torpedoes, running hydros, providing fire support to spotted things. They all are very similar. The London's different. Yeah, they all have heals. They all have really good heals. I didn't touch on it with London, but London has like the double heal that runs half as long compared to the other two, right? So London's heal ticks for like double of what these guys heal ticks for, but it only runs like half as long. But they all have like a gimmick in that regard, but the gimmick is the same. It's smoke and hydros and heals.
Yep.
And London just adds in bigger guns and HE that this guy doesn't have. And the one other thing I would throw out there that fits for your ships, for Makarov, not Trento, but Makarov and De Grasse, and fits for London with its HE. If we see a lot of aircraft carriers, which I think we will, using HE spammers to strip the AA mounts off of the other team's capital ship, if they have one battleship, is going to be a big deal. Being able to hammer the deck of a battleship with HE and just start breaking their AA off is really going to be a big boon to your CV. And make sure that they have clean drops. And so that's true with the other cruisers as well. I mean, if you can smash AA mounts off, which you always can at these tiers, that's kind of a fun inner mechanic that you can look for with HE spammers. That's something you can't do with Leander and with Mysore in this config.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. Definitely to be thinking about that. And also when you're thinking about your ship, remember, you can hold down the H button and see the percentage of your AA mounts that are still working, and do that throughout those clan battles as you're playing that. Check that out as you're playing and seeing what's happening, because you'll lose that AA effectiveness as you get HE spammed. That is definitely a real life thing that's going to happen. I think to the ships, particularly in your battleships, right? Your battleships are going to get rained on with HE because that's one of the ways that we deal with battleships in World of Warships. And so you'll see those mounts getting knocked off and your ship getting less and less capable to fend off those incoming airdrops. And Scott, I think you're right. We're going to see carriers. They're going to be a part of this. Carriers, that vision early in the match, that vision late in the match is worth so much. but I don't think you're going to see. I was about to say I don't think you're going to see a lot of battles without carriers, but it kind of came and went with tier 10 clan battles this last time around. So maybe we'll see a mix of weeks where we have strong carrier presence and weeks where we don't. And we'll talk more about carriers here towards the end of the night. We do have a couple of honorable mentions. I didn't when you changed your Perth Leander stuff around, I didn't bring Perth in as an honorable mention, but I think you've discussed it. It is critical to remember Perth does not have the heal anymore. You lose the heal when you go to Perth, and so that's a thing that I always forget. I assume I'm not the only one there. When I'm thinking about picking that ship, I go, oh, Perth, it's a Leander, but it's it's got HE, and I go pick it, and then I get into battle and I go, oh crap, I don't have my hull repair anymore. So just be aware that that is the case there. Honorable mentions here, there are two. I added another HE spammer, the Budyonny. Budyonny is the second highest damage of the tier 6 cruisers. Drevix, we'll get to your comment here in a second. We should talk about that. It's only behind the Mysore. So Mysore is number 1 damaging tier 6 cruiser. Budyonny is next, and Budyonny is old. This is an old tech tree boat that's been in the game forever. So the fact that it's still competitive in damage with all the new ships that have come out over the years is really, really telling about what this ship is capable of. And the way that it gets that damage is with a 12.5% fire chance. I think I might have a 1% boost on that. I'm not sure. Maybe mine's up to 13.5. And a 16.6 kilometer firing range, which I believe you can add a spotting plane to this. I might be wrong on that. But Budyonny is a great boat if you're liking that long range HE spamming play style in support of those heavier ships that are up front. And Budyonny, I mean, you can think of it as a Lazo at tier 6 because it plays very similarly. We also added Pensacola. Pensacola is a ship that I realized we had to talk about. I don't like Pensacola, and Skada and I were talking about this, and he said, hey man, do we need to talk about Pensacola? And I said, no, I don't like that boat. And he said, yeah, okay, but I think we should maybe think about it. And I said, oh, okay. And so I took it out and I played with it. And when I last played Pensacola, it was a tier 7 ship, and I was being match made against tier 9s, and now it's a tier 6 ship, and I'm being match made against tier 8s. But if you remember that Pensacola is only going to fight like tier ships in clan battles, I think it's going to be a really solid pick, and it maybe should have made one of our lists. But with our themes, it just didn't really fit in. Pensacola has excellent armor, some of the heaviest armor for this class, especially when it's bow in. It's going to be very strong, very capable. 32,700 hit points is on the high side for tier 6 cruisers, and it's got the 203s. With that incredible US AP damage. If you get the heavy AP shells, if you use those 203s, if you stay bow in, you should be able to really dunk on like tier cruisers and even threaten destroyers with the HE alpha that it's got. 14% fire chance because of those big old shells, and a decent AA rating at 55 is second best, I think, at tier 6. The only one that beats it is Wang He, which Dr. Evix brought up in chat. He said, hey, did I miss Wang He? I like to talk about how Wang He has really great AA at tier 6, and it does. It has incredible AA, but it gives up enough of the tricks from Leander that I don't know if I think we're going to see it in this competitive mode. So anyway, Budyonny, Pensacola, Wang He, Skada, any honorable mentions or comments on those ships or other ships you want to mention that we didn't talk about in our 1, 2, 3s?
Sure. Just briefly on Budyonny. Budyonny has a spotter plane, and then it also has defensive AA or a fighter plane you can pick from. So it actually fits that role really well if you run the spotter and you run defensive AA of being that like kiting fire boy or like that flanker. It's not really like a French flanker, but it's like a kite away fire guy. It has crazy range. My stats in Budyonny were really good when I played that line. I like that boat. It's not the way that it's not the kind of boat that I would play in clan battles, but I like that boat. Pensacola, likewise, when I first started playing World of Warships, I started playing in February of 2019. And like most people that are Americans, you go, I'll play American ships, and I'll go in there and I'll show them. I'll get my Trump wagon and I'll go do some damage. And so like I went out there and I got to tier 6 in the Pensacola. My numbers in it are god awful. They're terrible. Like I don't like to go look at them. I think my average damage in that ship is like 19k. It's terrible. My wins in it are god awful. I don't know if I ever survived a match. And I went to a good friend of mine in the clan who's a good player, Honey Badger, and I said, what am I doing wrong? And he said, play French cruisers. Go play a different line. And so I played French cruisers to 10 and learned how to play a different way in those, and then went back and played Pensacola to Des Moines. So I needed more experience before I could make the Pensacola work. The other night, I hadn't played Pensacola in a long time. I took it out and I did what I say 48K or something like that in it, which isn't that amazing, except that was like a high damage mark. Now when I go look at my account, that's the most damage I've ever done in a Pensacola. So I think when we did tier 6 clan battles last time around, one of our friends, Kablamo, who is in the clan, he used Pensacola a fair amount because it does have 25 millimeter bow armor. Every tier 6 battleship you will face in this clan battle only has a 26 millimeter bow. Pensacola has a 25 millimeter bow. All the other cruisers have like 19 to 21 maybe 21 if they're
Some
lucky.
of them are
I don't even know if it's that good. Most of it's 16, right?
Yeah.
And so that 25 millimeter bow is hard to overmatch for pretty much all the light cruisers. The 152s and stuff really aren't gonna.
There's Kablamo.
Kablamo, there you are, buddy.
Hey,
I'm here
man.
for your gospel. He played this ship to effect, and he's a very good player. But he used this ship well for us in clan battles a couple seasons ago.
Yeah.
It isn't as bad as you remember. If you
not.
go broadside in it, it is. But that's that way with every cruiser at this tier. They're all not fun to play if you go broadside in them to somebody, right? None of these are going to take AP rockets in the sidewell. None of them are going to take battleship blast to the sidewell. Otherwise, I mentioned Perth. Another ship that I like briefly is the Molotov. I like the Molotov.
Yes,
it's a premium Russian tier 6. Molotov has 180 caliber guns that it's very similar to Kirov if you played Kirov at tier 5. But I really like the AP on the Molotov. They're like rail guns, and they're high velocity shells, and you can punish other cruisers with that AP. It's a Citadel farmer. If you ever have a Molotov or a Kirov, you've gone out and you've farmed like tier cruisers with it, and you can really hurt them. It doesn't have great armor, but nobody does at this tier, and it doesn't play the way that Clyde's Budyonny or Makarov would play, because it's not about being at 15 kilometers and lobbing fire at people. It's more, I mean, you can do that with it. Its HE's good, but I use its AP more, and you play it differently. I don't want to say that you play it like a Petro or a Moskva and you play the other ones like a Donskoy or a Nevsky, but that kind of is true.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I struggle with the Molotov because I try to get in position and I get broadside, right? Which, as we've already pointed out, it's really, really dangerous to do that in any of these ships. It's just really hard to pull that off successfully. And so, I did the same thing as you when you said, hey, man, maybe we should talk about Pensacola. Kablamo will be mad if we don't talk about it. I took it out into a couple battles. I had one good battle where I did 55,000 damage against tier 8s. I was mixing it up with a Tirpitz and a Lenin, as were the two guys I had to fight, plus their little destroyer buddy. We managed to do 55K before getting chunked, and that was really good bow in play. And then I had another battle where I got in there and I got surprised on the side and they deleted me. I did 13,000 damage, right? So don't get surprised, but like Skada points out, that's going to be a problem in every single cruiser we talked about. So Pensacola having that problem and having better armor than all the other cruisers tells you that it's going to be just fine if you're playing it right. So I have to say Pensacola is good. And, I played some Indianapolis in tier 7 ranked back when that was a thing here recently. And I had good battles in the Indianapolis, which is kind of the same boat. And I didn't like Indianapolis back when I didn't like Pensacola either. So, I think I've just kind of learned a couple of things as a player. And I'm hoping to pass those things on. And if maybe you guys can educate me on some more things, right? I think there's always room to grow, but definitely I think Pensacola is a worthwhile choice for people who understand how to keep bow in and dish up those damages. Midgard, thank you for the follow. We're glad to have you. Welcome. This is a special stream about clan battles. Obviously, you must have figured that out. But welcome. Okay. Anything else on honorable mentions or other discussion on cruisers from Skada? Any comments from chat that we want to cover? Otherwise, I think we're going to go play a tier 6 cruiser battle.
Play a match.
All right, let's go do it. What ship are you taking? What cruiser is your bay? That's stupid. I can't leave that in there.